The session 1 is on perspectives on India's participation in IETF. IETF stands here for Internet Engineering Task Force. And to take us through this perspectives, we have got three eminent people in the panel. Uh, we have Anand Raje. Who is a serial entrepreneur, is also the chair of Internet Society Kolkata chapter, co-founder India Internet Foundation, and has been extensively working on ITF capacity building programs. Then we have Abhijan Bhattacharya. Abhijan Bhattacharya is a senior scientist in Tata Consultancy Services. He is from Jadavpur University, currently pursuing his PhD, is an author of one of the RFCs, which is in IETF. And we will hear from him about his journey in IETF and much more of his thoughts. And then we have Shraddha Hegde. She is a principal engineer in Juniper Networks. Before that, she was with Huawei. She has done her bachelor's from Karnataka University and also alumnus of BITS Pilani. So we will also, and she's a host of, author of host of RFCs, and also has got a lot of patents in her name. One of the signing lights in terms of female participation from India in IETF. So we'll hear Shraddha as well as part of her sharing of thoughts. So with this, quickly before we set the tone of this discussion and perspectives, I'll request Anand to update all of us in terms of what exactly is ITF, what is RFC, and why should, and what are the areas where one should be focused upon. So Anand, if you can quickly in next 5 minutes tell us that what exactly is ITF and what were we talking about here.
Sure, Anupam. So to answer this, I thought sharing a presentation over here. I'll not go through the whole presentation because it is dwelling upon what ITF is all about. And what I'll do, I'll share a link in the chat so that anybody who is interested and digging deeper on ITF can go through on it. So if we see ITF from a perspective, so it's kind of an open international community. And the main agenda over here is the evolution of internet architecture and the smooth operations of internet. So from last 2 days, we were having discussions on DNS, kind of BGP, AS numbers, IPv4 and IPv6. These all are kind of the nuts and bolts of internet, how actually internet works. And ITF is there to make standards so that they can work in harmony. And if I go through the mission of ITF, so actually the real mission is to churn out technical documents. If I'm talking about churning out technical documents, that means that these documents are there to being used in the design, use, and management of internet. In a layman terms, if as a newcomer also I had very difficulty to understanding how ITF works and what is the core idea of ITF, I'll just give an analogy over here. So we were talking about DNS even in the Sunny's discussion. We were talking about decentralized nature of DNS. We were talking about how it helps the running DNS operations. So kind of this discussion and this architecture, this should be discussed somewhere there should be consensus on what could be the possible architecture and how it should evolve. ITF is home for those discussions. So whenever there is something that need to be taken care of as an architectural point of view, or taken care of something which new need to be done, there is some problem area which need to be taken care of, ITF is home for that. So if I have listed some RFC like RFC 1034, 1035, these are some RFCs which are for DNS. RFC 4033, 4034, 4035, these are some documents which underpins the DNSSEC capabilities. So above that, I have just listed three softwares which manages DNS: bind from NSD and unbound from NLNet. So these softwares are deployed in various servers across the world, which are actually managing the authoritative servers, the TLD servers, the root servers. Some recursive servers are also being managed by these softwares. They work in harmony and they work with each other so seamlessly that we even if somebody wants to write their own code, write their own recursive server, they can just need to adhere to these RFCs, and then the rest of the things will be managed. So this is something the ITF does. So whenever you are trying to understand an architecture, discuss an architecture, have some consensus on that, and then have a document, and based on those documents, there are some softwares which are deployed over across the internet, and rest of the things has been done. So if may I have more time, Anupam, or I could. Hello, I can hear you.
Yes, Anand, you can take a minute more and tell us about what are the different areas in IETF, if you have that.
Sure. There are 4 or 5 core principles on where ITF works. It's an open process, works in technical competence, can learn from many sources. It's a volunteer driven and works on rough consensus. And it takes the protocol ownership. So if it is developing a protocol, it takes the complete ownership of that protocol. There are 5 areas right now, and these areas can be changed later on. So the where ITF works is the application and real-time area, general area, routing area, operations and management area, and internet area. The core work of ITF is actually worked on working groups. So these areas, if you go through this the URL that I have given in the slide, so if I have taken internet area, so these are some of the working groups that's there in that particular internet area. So how to get involved into, because it's an open platform where you can get involved into that. Just click on that area and you are into that working group page. And in that working group page, you can go to the mailing list, you can subscribe to that mailing list and can understand what is happening in that particular working group, what are the documents which are being discussed over there, which are active drafts. There are lots of other things over there, and time is very limited. So what I have done is I have given us resources in this particular slide so that you can go through, and if you want to contribute, or if you want to learn more, these are the resources which help you out into your journey. Thanks, Anupam.
Great, Anand. So Anand, I'll come back to you in a while. So with this, let me move to Shraddha. So Shraddha, which year you started participating in ITF? And I believe that RFC 7777 is your first RFC. So can you talk about your journey in ITF?
Yeah, sure, Anupam. Yeah, so I started. I was a silent watcher of IETF mailing lists and so on right from the beginning when I started my career in Huawei. That is the year 2000 and 2002. That is the time frame where I used to. I was a coder basically. I used to code for this RFCs, and I used to watch the IETF mailing lists and so on to see and understand what is going on or what is being discussed and so on. Yeah, after some spending 4 or 5 years in the area, I was quite comfortable in reviewing the document and sending my comments or questions. So that is the time I spent almost 2-3 years, actively reviewing documents that came through, that used to come and that used to get discussed in the working group. My active participation started in sort of 2012-13. That is when I first came up with this extension for OSPF protocol. Um, so it so started that in one of the discussions when I just identified that some protocol extension was missing in OSPF protocol, and then it would have been better if there was an extension like this in OSPF protocol. One of my colleagues suggested that why don't you go ahead and publish a draft on that, and that's how it all started. Um, so that's how the RFC 7777 came about. So From then onwards, I then started going to IETF and participating in person meetings. So I am mainly active in routing area. So Anand just now gave a very good summary of what all the areas are there in IETF. So routing is my area of interest, and I participate in mostly in link state routing, IDR and Spring working groups. Over the years, I've produced multiple drafts in the area of protection, basically. Protection in link state routing protocols. And also I'm very active in segment routing, which is Spring working group. And many of my protocol extensions and drafts have been in this area.
Fantastic, fantastic. So just to extend this thought, Shraddha, so what you said very correctly, that you observed the entire process for quite some time before making an active contribution. Now, did you physically participate in the IETF meetings while you were observing, or it was just an observation from the mailing list?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was mainly observation from the mailing list. In IETF, a lot of thing happens over the mailing list. Yeah, in-person meetings, I started going only when my draft became a working group draft, basically. So when I wrote my first draft, I had never participated in IETF in-person meetings. So a lot of thing happens on the mailing list in IETF. To describe the process, right? When you first come up with some idea, you write a document and you post it as an individual draft. So this draft, I mean, you identify a working group where this could belong to based on your understanding of where this work should belong. And then the chairs will decide whether this really belongs to this working group or it has to be taken to another working group. So then it gets discussed in the mailing list. And so when it is an individual draft, I mean, you are the owner of the document, and you will be in charge of making updates to the document when somebody reviews and so on. So it depends on how much interest your extension generates on the mailing list. Like how many people think this is something that is very much required for the community. Okay. And how much, I mean, how many people are ready to review it, and they really think that this is required for the internet. So based on that, then after, ideally, I mean, once you have an individual draft, you ideally you should present it in IETF meetings at least once or twice before it goes for working group adoption. In my case, some of my colleagues helped me. I never traveled during that time. Some of my colleagues helped me present my document in the IETF. So based on the interest it generates, then the chairs will call for working group adoption, which working group adoption, and if all people, there is a consensus on making it a working group document, then it becomes a working group document, in which case your individual name from the name of the draft goes, and there is the working, I mean, you remain an author. But the name of the the draft becomes a working group name. So then onwards, the entire working group is the owner of, is responsible for the quality of this document. The community reviews, provides feedback. You'll still remain as the main author, and then taking care of those comments and updating your draft. All that is part of your job until that draft becomes an RFC.
Great, great. So what essentially I understood, Shraddha, that it is possible to contribute in IETF without physical participation, and then physical participation helps when you do have an active draft or you want to discuss with community at large. Yes. Okay, so thanks. Shraddha, I'll come back to you, but before that, let me go to Abhijan. So Abhijan, you are also an author of RFC 7967 and first indigenous RFC from how it is recognized. So tell us more about your journey in publishing of an RFC And the thought which I would like you to consider while you are explaining is that, uh, do you think that internet would have happened without IETF?
Right. First of all, thank you very much, Anupam, for inviting me and the whole Insight team. It is good to see known faces like Shraddha and all we have met in ITF several times. So coming to your question, and of course, apologies because the background is not working in my system. So I have been trying experimenting with that. Anyway,
Not a
so
challenge.
yeah, so coming to the question, see, for me the case is a little bit unique in the sense that I mean, given the kind of technical working environment I was in, ITF is not really a practice, unlike many of the product companies. If you talk about Huawei or Ericsson, okay. So for me, it was kind of a natural progression to IETF. I mean, something that came up instinctively. So basically, we are working in the field of IoT back into 2011, and that time IoT was a buzzword. It is no longer a buzzword right now, at least not a new buzzword. So at that point of time, we were trying to do some practical experiments with some of the sensors, etc. And then we tried to find out that what are the solutions that are available off the shelf. Because that time, at that point of time, I think Shraddha will also agree, by back in 2011, 2012, the we IoT world was also relying on the what was called the de facto language of the web, which is HTTP. And then it was found that HTTP was really not the answer to the unique requirements posed by IoT. So we are kind of doing a being from a research team. We are kind of exploring that what is there. And at that point of time, we found that okay, some new things are being developed, some open source are being created, and we got some university codes from University of Bremen, etc. And while searching, I found that okay, these things are happening actually in ITF. And then I realized that I heard this name somewhere back during my studies. Okay, and we used to think that the RFCs were the standards were actually from demigods, and now I realize that actually the standards are also being built by humans like me, who has done some engineering. And then we started doing this, and we started building with whatever open source we found. And really we thought that I mean, still these were in a very nascent stage. Okay, and when we actually I deployed the stuff in my car, we drove around the office premises in highways, and we're finding some problems which are not being addressed by the thing. And the versions which were coming, because the draft versions were evolving, and we found that these concerns were not answered by the community at that point. And then what Shraddha said, I mean, we realized that actually you can contribute there. You can subscribe to mailing list, and this is a very open system. And this was new to me, at least, because my technical community was more involved in some of the India specific standardization that was happening, like GISFI, something in the line of forming a 3GPP counterpart or like that, where it is all membership based. So you have to come from an industry body, you'd have to have a industrial membership. And that was my idea. This open SDO was totally new for me. And then I realized that, and then I started studying. And in 2012, I'm grateful to my company, my organization. They allowed me to go and discuss with the authors who are developing. So my idea was to understand whether the kind of gaps we identified, the kind of use cases we were trying, whether those were being discussed in the community, even if not in public, but whether the original authors were thinking about that. So then what after I visited, that was my first ITF in Paris, 2012, March. And I made some very good friends, and that friendship is still continuing till date. And then I actually spoke, I got the opportunity to spoke to the actual authors who were developing the solution, and the actual the developers whose code we were using. So it was a good learning session at that point of time. And then we came back, and in November we were able to in November 2013 or sorry, in July 2013, I mean, with a very, so with a very trembling heart, I submitted my first ever RFC with lot of fear that how the community will scold me, and maybe my manager will also see that and tell me that, okay, you are not doing anything, but what you have done, you have ruined our image. So that was the fear at that point of time. Typical, the kind of, in our times in schools and colleges, we used to live with this kind of mindset. So, but that caught a lot of attention first up, because people said that this was something that was missing and that was needed. And then it was a very tough journey for me, because I was kind of soul with my soul capacity. I was trying to lead this thing, and I'm grateful to Internet Society. They allowed me fellowship for 4 times, and also grateful to my company who actually had faith in me. So finally, in 2016, it was a 3 years endeavor, constant endeavor. There were oppositions, and we are not like carrying a team of people who will raise hands. So getting hands raised was very difficult, and actually people off record, they are saying that yes, it is very good, we are using it, but when I'm asking for hands, it was not there. But anyway, we actually took the individual submission route, and from there we got the RFC, and this is being used. If you look into the connected lights and all these the specs, the customized specifications for connected lights and all these communities, you will see this RFC is being mentioned, being used. And I also find some use in LP WAN, the high level signaling of LP WAN. Now coming to the second part, where IETF is heading, I think that was the second question, right?
No, I'll come to that. So before
Oh,
that, just a small. I heard that there is a hum process in IETF. You are mentioning about raising hand. So, uh,
oh no, yeah. Sorry, I mean, by raising hand, it was essentially humming. But in many meetings, I have seen that people actually want to identify that who are the opposition, because it is not to identify the opposition, but
hmm,
identify the concern. Okay, so in any case, there is hum. So humming is good if my boss and myself both are there, and my boss does not like the proposal and I like the proposal, I can hum and without being notified. But if it is a technical concern and there is a practical aspect to it, so you can go against it, but people need to know who are against and what is the concern. Then you actually need to identify the people who is against it, right?
hmm,
So in those situations, you need to identify that who are the people who are opposing this, what is the concern that is not being addressed. Okay, if it
absolutely,
is very obvious, yeah. So
absolutely,
in
absolutely.
that, you need to find that people.
Okay, okay. So Avijan, I'll again come back to you. So Anand, moving back again to you in terms of you are doing some very active work on internet measurements. Okay, so why do you think internet measurements is an area of importance now?
Yeah, thanks, Alupam. So, last couple of years, we were working on different kinds of internet measurement on DNS and other aspects of it, measuring protocol parameters. It all started when we have first deployed LRoot instance in Kolkata. From then that point of view, when the internet is changing, it's changing its nature, applications are changing, the way the architecture is changing, and there are lots of organizations who are measuring internet. India being a diverse geographical, having a diverse geographical region, the nature and uses of internet, it needs to be measured for the grassroots to come across and to understand how internet works in terms of latency and its services. Some of the things that we are working as community initiative, and I would like to name over here, because the fellows are over here. If they are interested, they can also involve into this. So Samiran has pointed out in his presentation, there are two things that we are working with them. One of the ITSI project, the Internet Technologies Health Identifier, it's one of the ICANS project that we are working on with because we are also hosting Kolkata IX as one of the IX and having lots of peers with us. So with recursive servers, we are trying to get insight into what is happening inside a recursive server. This is also giving us an idea of what kind of information we should take as measure for measurement, and what could be the privacy issues over there. There is one RSEC 047, even your work party leader over there is RSEC 047 V2. So we are also working on this deployment of vantage points where we could measure the root server performances, which will help in the SLA determination in the future for root server operators. So we are trying to have our vantage points from where we can usually understand what root server parameters are there. I would also provide some URLs in the chat if the fellows are interested. They could go and can see that what these measurements are looking right now, and these are all indigenous developed. Even some of them are coded by our team. One of the things also we are working, these are some contribution part of it. We are also working on some indigenous development on internet measurement network, on working on the Anycast LRoot instances. Right now we are hosting around 4 LRoot instances and 1 FRoot instance. And we are working with an experiment with ICANN, wherein these Anycast instances in a particular geographical region, whether they can act as DR site to one another or not, or where the what could be the latency of it. Here the root server ICANN is also involving, iPhone and ISOC is also involving, as well ISOC Kolkata chapter, as well as the service provider network. We are also helping with them to understand the latency issues where these type of things are happening. The experiment is going on. And I would like to also mention one of the projects that we are working on is Advanced Internet Operations Research in India. It's one of the Government of India funded project executed by STPI, and 2 agencies, iPhone and ISO Kolkata chapter, is working on it. It's a completely community-driven internet measurement network. We are measuring 2 aspects of it. There are 5 Anycast locations where DNS test beds are there. If you just go through aiori.in, and that's, I'm typing over here, it could give you whether this particular website is served from your location or serving from another location. So it will give you a routing detour, whether if you are serving served from Kolkata and you are in Kolkata, that means there is no routing detour. But if it is served from Bangalore and you are in Kolkata, then the latency is high, that means there is a routing detour. And we are trying to understand this measurement, this aspect of it, when the edge computing is right now on demand, and how to actually work on these edge parameters of it. The second part of this project is also deploying Anchor.
Anand, I'll stop you here. So,
Sure.
so what I understand, that it is important to measure different parameters of internet working so that we can improve it. And
yes,
that's the contribution which the technical community makes into the policy discussions. So it is important
yes,
for policy people to take into account what happens here. So,
definitely. Anupama, I'll just go through 2 lines. So these type of things was not happening in India. So trying to understand and digging into the source codes and understand what kind of data we need to take into account, and to also intervene into policy and standardization of these things are very much helpful, and these are giving insight into it.
fantastic. So, Shraddha, I'll come back to you. So now, while there has been extensive participation of men from India in IETF, though the absolute number may be very less. Okay. How was your journey as a woman participation, and why is it less from this particular region, or how is it overall in IETF?
Yeah, overall in IETF, I would say the woman participation is not as much as we would like to see. But it's over the years, it's been definitely improving, and especially from China, I see a lot of young women coming to IETF and making very good contributions. As far as contribution from India goes, I think we even have working group chairs who are women. I think Shweta is a working group chair of one of the working groups. But yeah, the participation from India is, I would say, we definitely have a lot of scope to improve in terms of women participating in IETF. So one of the, so for my journey, right, I was well supported by my colleagues who were already very active in IETF. So that made my journey much easier as compared to someone who may be coming from backgrounds where not a lot of colleagues or not a lot of people who can support you when you are in IETF. Especially Abhijan mentioned that was his case, and if that is the case, it's a very difficult job. I mean, it's quite challenging, proposing something and then having the community agree to what you're proposing and then getting it into standardization is a very tough process. And also, IETF in the sense that there are a lot of very technical people, right? I mean, I would totally agree with Abhijan on his observation that we Indians are a little apprehensive on, what I'm going to propose. Will people laugh at me, or will people get angry at me? All those inhibitions, right? So I think if you believe that there is something, some missing thing, or you're trying to improve something, there is, I mean, there's absolutely no harm in proposing that. You might not succeed sometimes, which is fine. I mean, at least you have tried, even if you're not succeed for the first time. But then, having that experience of proposing some new thing and then getting people's opinion. Sometimes it may so happen that, I mean, what we are thinking is not really. I mean, we are going in the wrong direction. It can happen, and when we propose something, people might just jump on you and say, "Hey, this is not what is required." But then just going and presenting it there, you would definitely get a lot of inputs that you wouldn't have if you had done nothing. So I would say that, if you fail, don't be really bothered about failures. Failures would only take one step closer to the success.
So
That's sort of my input, and I hope Abhijan and Anand would agree with that.
no, Shraddha, you are talking very philosophical. I was expecting some technical, but yes, if you will not ride the horse, if you will not fail from the horse if you don't ride. So this is something like that. So I take this key thing away from your comment is that there is still an scope for mentoring when people from India participate, and possibly we need to make our IETF community in India more stronger, because that's where the mentoring will start. So again, I do have a question for you from the chat, that how do we encourage women participation considering we have many women in tech?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I said, and as also Anupam mentioned, there are quite a number of people who participate from India, and everyone is eager to help, whatever help they can, to people who want to participate. So definitely, if anyone is interested in contributing, if anyone is has some thoughts that they would like to pursue, we all from the IETF India community, we are definitely there to guide you and help you, to make it, to guide you through the journey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shraddha. So now overall, the participation in IETF from India has been on the lower side, but the absolute number, as I keep on seeing, it is the same. Some people are active, some people are not active. What essentially it means that some of the countries miss the bus of discussion in IETF. So to be a little fast forward on this, Abhijan, this is a question to you. Where do you think IETF itself is headed, and what should be the focus area for participation from Indians or people from South Asia?
So I need to understand a little bit better your question. So what exactly you are expecting when you are saying that where ITF is heading?
So,
So
so there are possibly, I'll rephrase it. So what really happens that if you suddenly want to participate in a working group which has been working for, sorry, 5-7 years, okay. Now understanding the dimensions of that working group, the discussions which are happening possibly might be very difficult. But if say a new working group is formed, and then it becomes more easy to be part of the discussion because you are there from the start. Okay. Now, what are those new areas where ITF is currently working, where suddenly, if few people get interested, they can join the discussions from the start. So that is the idea of the question.
okay, yeah. So see, even before the working group, or even before thinking of joining the working group, my take will be that first you need to be aware that what is the role of ITF in academia or in industry, whatever you are doing, and you try to map ITF to your business, to your academic goals, okay, and try to see where they fit. Okay, that is from an industry person or from an academic person. Now, even before joining, waiting for a working group to be formed, there are also many, birds of feather discussions. I mean, even before working group, which may not mature to a working group, but these BOF discussions and everything is open to everybody. So if there is a BOF is being formed, of course, for BOF you need to be physically present there. But the good thing with pandemic is that nobody can be physically present, and so you can also remotely be present there. So no bad feelings in that. Now, in this case, one thing that I'm seeing is some working groups in IRTF, okay, which will be very of interest to academic people. IITF is the research wing of IETF. So IETF is basically where you are expecting the product to be readily available for the market, and IITF is where you are still doing some research and you need to wait for say 5 years or 7 years or about a decade. Okay, so in IITF, for example, this quantum internet working group. Okay, and I follow that working group. It is I mean, it cannot be said that too much overwhelming things are being discussed over there. I mean, these are some very, probably because of the maturity, the level of maturity of the technology in terms of practical deployment. Several physics aspects are yet to be solved or things like that. So, but the thing is that this is very important for the future 6G and whatever we are talking about, right? So this is one working group that I can name, that which may not be too much overwhelming, though it has been about a couple of years. I think back in 2019 or maybe during the pandemic time only the working group was formed. But this is something, because I see many people working in the quantum technologies these days. So this is something that people can get interested in. And what I would suggest is, since many are from academics, so the T2 Think to Think working group, the ICN research working group. So all these research working groups might be of a good interest for professors and students. And I'm stressing on IRTF because we are not inherently, we are not technology shaper yet. So there are companies who have opened their offices and doing the back office research, but it is not that Indian companies are driving the requirements of tomorrow. Okay, so to do that, we have to do a little bit of leapfrog, and for that we have to put more stress on research. Okay, research for tomorrow, because it is only leapfrogging that will help us take the catch the bus faster in future.
Fantastic, fantastic, Abhijan. So do we have any questions in the chat? We do have a comment which says that to encourage women in participating in getting more women in tech, we must ensure that there is sponsorship solely for women. Good point, Abraham. So do we have any questions here from anyone for the panelists? The floor is open now.
So Anupam, Amrita here. You know, when we are talking about mentorship, etc., what are the opportunities available for mentorship in India? You know, people may aspire to be part of IETF, they really don't know what to do, and there are steps. You know, one fine day you just don't take it up and write an RFC. It takes, you have to get familiar with the system and everything. Who can be the mentors, because mentorship helps? What are the avenues for that?
So, a 1 minute response from each one of you. I think that's an excellent point made by Amrita. So, Shraddha, what do you think should be done?
Yeah, so I would say that especially to people from academics, I think it's very important to identify an area which interests you, because IETF, as you saw, is very big, and you know, looking at everything at every area, or even in a particular area, it's better to choose what exactly which working group you want to focus on, because there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of history, right? Many years of history, and it always helps when you want to do something in a particular area to understand what all has been happened. So I think the first step for anybody would be to identify the area they are interested in and they want to contribute into, and then spend some time on going through the drafts and understanding the area very well. And then the next step is to, you know, see what kind of problems are being solved in that area. That gives you very good understanding of you know, where exactly is the technology going, and what are the areas that you're trying to solve. So once you identified what area you want to work on and what your domain of interest, then so there are two possibilities of mentorship. I would think that in IETF itself, if you're a first time IETF, if you're attending IETF for the first time, IETF itself assigns mentors to you, so that they help you navigate the IETF better. And of course, as I mentioned before, you could also reach out IETF India community, and people would be eager to help you as well.
So thank you, Shraddha. Abhijan, a quick 1 minute on what can be done.
So I need to borrow an idea from ISOC in this regard, which I did not find working because of lack of response. Because I was designated as in 2019, I was designated as the IETF resource person for South Asia by ISOC APAC. Okay, so my primary responsibility was that anybody willing to participate in IETF can, if they reach out to ISOC, ISOC will forward those queries to me. So that was the primary idea, but that did not work that much. So what I feel, okay, that so far as mentoring is concerned, the INSEC or these kind of these kind of events can actually churn out a model to help this, where we can break the India into some zones, and we identify some of the resource persons over there, and anybody approaching, and that should be publicized amongst the academia. So from north there are few people. So I'm talking about the zone because at times you may also like to go and interact with that person face to face. That may be a requirement. So that is something that can be created through all these, whatever activities are happening, IICB, INSEG, or whatever is happening. These things can be created. That is one thing. The other thing is that there is a lack of, at the source there is a problem. So it is a producer and consumer problem, right? In computer science. So producing side is the person who will be willing to write the RFC. So there are consumers who are going to take the request for mentorship, but where are the producers? Because that is lacking, because the the impetus or the incentive that you are going to get by writing an RFC, neither the academia nor the startup ecosystem, they are actually feeling the value Even when I spoke to the people from ministry, they also had the same concern that government wants to encourage, but they don't know what is the vocal tonic they need to push through the community so that people will be encouraged. So that is a fundamental problem that we need to address.
Okay, thank you, Abhijan. I think we are top of the hour. Very quick, 1 minute on Anand.
Yeah, I think I agree with Shraddha and Abhijan. So the kind of thrust that we have given in ICB and the Indian community out there. So definitely the first step is to choose your where you want to work, and there are lots of things that can be done over there. And definitely the incentives, these are not clear right now. We have seen in pockets research is going on. They are very much interested, but the kind of to understand that particular thing and to encourage as well as connect with them, that thing is lagging behind.
Okay, thank you, Anand. So quickly, I will summarize for my fellows here that there are opportunities of engagement with IETF. There are possibilities of getting fellowships to IETF. There is an Indian community which is there ready to help. Shraddha, Vijan, Anand, all of them are part of this Indian community. And there has been some good suggestions to think that how can we take this entire participation forward. And the best part is that now only till now we were looking only at IETF, but we also need to look at IRTF and the discussions which is happening in the birds of feather sessions, which will help us to understand what are the challenges which IETF is going to solve. And I really like the point of Shraddha that if you look at the problems which is being solved currently, it gives you the drift that where are we headed, what are the solutions which we are aiming for. So thank you, panelists Anand, Vijan, and Shraddha for your excellent comments and deliberations. And thank you on behalf of NSIC for joining today's session.